Ancient blueprints contain secrets of civilizations that vanished without a trace. These forgotten designs, created by brilliant minds whose very names are lost, reveal a past far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. By the end of our journey, you will see the grand sweep of human history in an entirely new light. What drove these visionaries to build cities that challenge our modern engineering? How could entire societies and their revolutionary plans simply disappear from memory? What does the relentless human drive to build and create truly leave behind for the future? One story towers above all others in the realm of forgotten blueprints, a tale whispered for over 2,000 years. The philosopher Plato first described a magnificent island empire called Atlantis, a utopian society that vanished beneath the waves in a single day and night. His account was not merely a story, it was a detailed blueprint for a perfect civilization. He wrote of a metropolis of concentric rings of land and water, connected by great canals and bridges. At its heart stood a glorious temple to Poseidon, clad in silver and gold. This was a society of immense power and advanced engineering, a place where harmony between people and their rulers was thought to be absolute. But this blueprint was more than just an architectural plan. It was a philosophical and social design for an ideal human community, one that ultimately fell out of favor with the gods due to its own pride. The haunting question has lingered ever since. Was Atlantis a real place? Many theories suggest it was inspired by the sophisticated Minoan civilization on Crete, a sea power that collapsed after a catastrophic volcanic eruption. Others point to other ancient cultures whose achievements seemed almost mythical to later generations. The specific elements Plato detailed, the grand canals designed for trade and defense, the precise geometric layout of the city, the sheer scale of its construction, all point to a pinnacle of urban planning and social order. This legendary blueprint has fueled an endless quest, driving explorers to search from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean, and inspiring thinkers to dream of perfect societies. It forces us to wonder if Atlantis was a historical warning, a moral fable about the dangers of hubris, or the ghost of a lost reality whose original design we are still struggling to decipher. The search for its physical truth may be endless, but the power of its blueprint is undeniable, a testament to a vision of a world that was either lost or perhaps never was. This enduring mystery of a society designed for perfection makes the tangible, stone-carved genius of a lone inventor from a later age all the more startling. While Atlantis remains a legend written on water, another blueprint was carved directly into the earth itself, on a scale so vast it defies comprehension from the ground. High above the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca Desert reveals its secrets. Etched into the dark, stony surface are hundreds of immense geoglyphs, clear white lines forming spirals, trapezoids, and stunningly precise figures of a hummingbird, a spider, a monkey, and even a giant astronaut. These are the Nazca lines, a terrestrial blueprint spanning miles of barren plateau. The visionaries behind this work were the ancient Parakas and Nazca peoples, cultures that flourished here over 2,000 years ago. They possessed an incredible understanding of their environment and a drive to create something that would outlast them for millennia. But what was the ultimate purpose of this monumental design? One leading theory, championed by the dedicated German mathematician and archaeologist Maria Reich, suggests the lines formed a giant astronomical calendar. Reich, who spent decades living in the desert to protect and study the lines, believed they pointed to key celestial events like solstices and equinoxes, mapping the heavens onto the earth to guide agricultural cycles and rituals. Another compelling idea is that the geoglyphs served as a sophisticated hydrological blueprint. In one of the driest places on Earth, the lines may have charted the flow of precious underground water, with the giant trapezoids acting as ceremonial pathways leading to vital water sources. The method of their creation speaks to a profound and organized vision. The builders simply removed the top layer of dark, sun-oxidized stones to reveal the lighter, sand-colored earth beneath. This sounds simple, but the precision is staggering. How did they scale up these perfect shapes and straight lines that run for miles without any visible deviation? They likely used a series of stakes and cords, working from a much smaller master diagram to execute a plan so large its full form is only visible from the sky. This forces a haunting question. Were these lines a message to gods who would view them from above, a ritual landscape for summoning life-giving water from the sky, or a complex survival map for the community, intertwining the celestial with the terrestrial? The mystery of the Nazca lines compels us to look upward, not just to the stars that may have guided their creators, but to the very idea of a blueprint drawn not on parchment, but on the skin of the planet. Long before the smooth-sided pyramids pierced the sky, the Egyptian landscape was a canvas of mud-brick tombs. Then came a man named Imhotep, serving the pharaoh Djoser. Imhotep was far more than an architect. He was a true polymath, a high priest, a skilled physician, and a master astronomer. His genius was to translate this vast knowledge into a single, revolutionary structure, the step pyramid at Saqqara. This was not merely a tomb, it was the world's first colossal stone building, a blueprint for eternity. Imhotep's design broke completely with tradition. He envisioned stacking 6 mastaba tombs, each smaller than the last, to create a towering staircase reaching for the heavens. This was a radical shift from brick to stone, a material chosen to last for eternity. The entire complex was a stone city for the afterlife, complete with ceremonial courtyards, shrines, and a labyrinth of underground tunnels and chambers designed to protect the pharaoh's remains and his treasures for all time. The blueprint was both an architectural and a spiritual marvel. By creating a stairway to the stars, Imhotep physically cemented the pharaoh's role as the divine link between the people and the gods. The pyramid was a machine for resurrection, ensuring the king's soul could ascend to join the eternal cycle of the sun. Imhotep's vision was so profound that he himself was later deified, a rare honor for a non-royal. Ancient texts would later praise him, saying he was the wise one who opened the stone, the chief lector priest whose words healed and whose designs gave form to the god's will. His blueprint for the step pyramid established a new paradigm, embedding the concept of divine kingship directly into the earth and stone of Egypt. This single design set a precedent that would spawn the iconic pyramids of Giza and define Egyptian royal architecture for millennia. The legacy of Imhotep is a testament to how one visionary's blueprint can reshape a civilization's identity and its physical world. Yet, this mastery of stone and celestial alignment makes the sudden, inexplicable sophistication of a culture halfway across the world all the more perplexing. In the stark, sun-baked hills of southeastern Turkey, a discovery so profound it rewrites human history lies half buried in the earth. Göbekli Tepe. Here, over 11,000 years ago, a society of hunter-gatherers erected the world's first known temple complex, a breathtaking architectural blueprint carved from stone. Its massive, T-shaped pillars, some weighing more than 10 tons, stand in silent circles, their surfaces adorned with intricate carvings of foxes, scorpions, and vultures. This monumental site predates Stonehenge by a staggering 6,000 years, and it completely upends our understanding of human progress. The conventional story tells us that agriculture came first, that farming allowed for settled communities, which then had the leisure and resources to build temples and develop complex religion. Göbekli Tepe turns that narrative on its head. Here, it seems, the temple came first. The visionaries behind this project, whose names are utterly lost to time, were not farmers living in a city. They were nomadic people who conceived and executed a blueprint of staggering ambition. The lead archaeologist, Klaus Schmidt, famously described it as a cathedral on a hill, a place of pilgrimage that would have drawn people from across the region for shared rituals and communal work. The very existence of such a place suggests a belief system so powerful, so unifying, that it could compel a mobile society to organize, to labor for generations, and to move stones that defy simple explanation. How did they quarry these colossal pillars without metal tools? How did they transport them for hundreds of meters and erect them with such precision? The architectural sophistication is undeniable, with enclosures carefully built and then intentionally filled in with soil, as if the people themselves were preserving their sacred blueprints for a future they knew would come. This intentional burial is what saved the site, sealing it for millennia until its rediscovery. Why would a society build this before they built permanent homes? What vision of the cosmos, what relationship with the animal world and the spirit realm, was so urgent that it had to be rendered in stone on such a colossal scale? The enigma of Göbekli Tepe's purpose is a haunting reminder of how much we have yet to learn about the dawn of human civilization. This mastery of communal effort and sacred design, carved directly from the landscape, finds a remarkable parallel in another ancient society that turned its collective genius toward a different, equally vital challenge: the life-giving power of water. Deep within the winding canyons of Jordan, a city of rose-red stone reveals a blueprint not just for grandeur, but for survival itself. Petra, the legendary capital of the Nabatean kingdom, is famous for its breathtaking treasury facade carved directly into the cliff face. Yet its true genius lies hidden in plain sight, etched into the very rock and wadi floors, a masterful hydraulic system that turned a barren desert into a lush, defensible metropolis. The visionaries here were hydraulic engineers of unparalleled skill, who understood that in a land of brutal sun and sudden, violent flash floods, controlling water was the ultimate source of power. Their blueprint was a complex network of dams, cisterns, and channels designed with astonishing precision to capture, channel, and conserve every precious drop. The main entrance to the city is a narrow, towering gorge called the Sick. Instead of leaving this natural corridor vulnerable to destructive floods, the Nabateans engineered it. They carved a slender water channel directly into the walls of the Sick, sometimes at shoulder height, guiding clean water from a spring into the heart of the city, while the main canyon floor remained a dry passageway for people and caravans. Alongside this, they constructed a massive dam at the entrance to divert floodwaters away through a separate, specially carved tunnel, a feat that protected the Sick from erosion for centuries. Within the city itself, this hydraulic blueprint expanded into an intricate web. Vast underground cisterns were carved deep into the bedrock, their interiors plastered to prevent leakage, storing enough water to sustain tens of thousands of people and their camels through long dry seasons. Even the Grand Temple of the Winged Lions featured its own sophisticated water system, with channels and basins that may have been used for both ritual purification and practical cooling. How did a society of nomadic traders evolve into master water architects? Their entire city was a machine for living in the desert. By taming the flash floods, they not only prevented disaster but harnessed its power, spreading silt to enrich the soil in terraced gardens and farming plots that would have seemed impossible in such an arid landscape. This blueprint for water management transformed Petra from a mere stop on the incense trade route into a magnificent, self-sufficient capital that commanded respect and wealth. It forces us to reconsider what makes a civilization truly advanced. Was it their monumental tombs, or was it their invisible, life-giving mastery of the desert's most scarce resource? The vision of Petra's engineers, carved in stone and flowing water, demonstrates that the most enduring blueprints are often those that solve the most fundamental human challenges. This logical, grid-based organization of a city around the control of nature finds its ultimate expression in a plan so orderly, so methodical, it seems to have been drawn with a ruler across an entire continent. While the Nabateans were carving their hydraulic empire from rock, another civilization was laying out a city with a ruler's precision on the plains of the Indus Valley. Mohenjo-Daro, rising around 2,500 years before the Common Era, presents a blueprint not of temples or tombs but of stunning civic order. Its visionaries, whose names are entirely lost, designed a metropolis that prioritized public health and social organization to a degree that would not be seen again for over a millennium. The city's layout was a marvel of early urban planning, with wide, straight streets laid out in a precise grid pattern. Houses were built from standardized, kiln-fired bricks, their uniformity suggesting a society that valued collective harmony over individual display. This was not a city dominated by the palace of a king or the tomb of a pharaoh. Its grandeur was in its functionality, in the quiet genius of its infrastructure. The most revolutionary feature lay beneath those orderly streets. Mohenjo-Daro boasted the world's first known and remarkably sophisticated urban sanitation system. A network of covered drains ran throughout the city, channeling wastewater from individual homes into larger sewers. Many houses contained their own bathing areas and toilets, with waste pipes neatly connected to the main public drains running under the streets. This was a society that understood, on a massive scale, the vital connection between cleanliness, public health, and a thriving community. At the heart of the city stood the Great Bath, a watertight, meticulously constructed pool housed within a large, colonnaded building. This was likely more than just a place for bathing. It may have served as a central ritual and social space, a place for communal gatherings where the act of purification, both physical and spiritual, reinforced the social bonds that held the city together. How did these anonymous planners achieve such a high degree of organization? The uniformity in brick sizes, the consistent street widths, and the comprehensive drainage system all point to a powerful central authority, one that valued the well-being of its citizens enough to enforce building codes and invest in long-term public works. What values did these visionaries hold that led them to prioritize communal well-being in their city's design? They built for the living, creating a blueprint for a healthy, orderly urban life that stands in stark contrast to the pyramid-building, tomb-centric cultures of its time. The sheer logic of Mohenjo-Daro feels almost modern, a testament to a vision of civilization where the greatest achievement was not a monument to a single ruler, but a functional, healthy home for thousands. This organized chaos of city planning, grounded in stone and sewer, gives way to a blueprint of an entirely different nature, one written not in brick but in myth and epic. Yet the most powerful blueprints are not always carved in stone, but woven into the very fabric of a culture through story. In ancient India, two epic poems, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, served as profound literary blueprints, meticulously outlining the ideals of society, duty, and kingship for thousands of years. These were not mere tales of gods and heroes. They were comprehensive guides to life itself, compiled and structured by visionary sages. The Mahabharata, attributed to the sage Veda-Vyasa, is a colossal narrative centered on a devastating war between two branches of a royal family. Within its vast chapters, it lays out a complex moral and legal framework, exploring the nuanced concept of dharma, or righteous duty. The Ramayana, composed by the poet Valmiki, presents the journey of Prince Rama, the ideal king, whose exile and battle to rescue his wife Sita become a template for ethical conduct and royal virtue. These stories provided a shared cultural language, a blueprint for how a king should rule, how a warrior should fight, and how an individual should live within their community. The descriptions within these epics are often startlingly specific. The Mahabharata details advanced military formations, strategies, and weapons that seem to transcend their time. Some passages describe projectiles that blaze with the light of 1,000 suns and are capable of leveling entire cities, interpretations that have led some to speculate about the possibility of advanced, even technological, knowledge from a forgotten age. Whether taken as poetic metaphor or potential historical record, these details underscore the epic's role as a foundational document, a blueprint for statecraft and warfare that was studied and revered. The true genius of these visionary compilers was to encode a civilization's deepest values into unforgettable narratives. They created a world where cosmic battles illustrated the eternal struggle between right and wrong, and where the choices of heroes and kings served as lessons for every person. How does a story become the soul of a civilization? It happens when its characters and their dilemmas provide a constant mirror for society, a blueprint for a righteous life that guides generations long after the architects are gone. The spiritual and societal order mapped in these Indian epics finds a strange and silent echo thousands of miles away, on a remote island where a different kind of visionary left a blueprint written in giant, mysterious stones. On a remote island in the vast Pacific, hundreds of massive stone figures stand in silent vigil. These are the Moai of Easter Island, and their stoic faces gaze not out to sea, but inward across the land their creators called home. The Rapa Nui visionaries who conceived this landscape did more than simply carve statues. They designed a complete spiritual blueprint, a physical manifestation of a society built on ancestor veneration. Each Moai was far more than a block of volcanic rock. It was a sacred vessel, a representation of a powerful ancestor whose spiritual essence, or mana, could continue to watch over and influence the living. This belief system fueled an entire socio-religious structure, one where different clans competed in a powerful display of devotion and one-upmanship. Erecting a larger, more imposing Moai than your neighbors was not just about prestige. It was a direct way to harness greater spiritual power for your community, securing prosperity and protection through the favor of the ancestors. This competition drove the creation of ever more colossal figures, culminating in the largest Moai ever attempted, which remains unfinished in the quarry, a towering 70 feet long. The process of bringing these giants to life was a breathtaking feat of communal engineering that began at the volcanic quarry of Rano-Roroku. Here, master carvers used hand-held basalt picks to painstakingly shape the stone, freeing the Moai from the cliff face. Once carved, the multi-ton statues had to be transported miles across the island to their final ceremonial platforms, called ahu. While the exact method remains a topic of debate, the prevailing theory suggests a combination of log rollers and ropes. Teams of workers would have carefully rocked the statue forward, placing rollers underneath and using massive ropes to pull it along a prepared path. This was not the work of a few, but of an entire community united by a shared spiritual goal, a coordinated effort that turned belief into moving stone. Yet, this very process may have contained the seeds of societal collapse. The prevailing narrative suggests that the intensive logging for timber to create these rollers and ropes, combined with other pressures, led to the overexploitation of the island's fragile palm forests. Without trees, the soil eroded, canoe building for fishing became impossible, and the society that had achieved such monumental heights faced a devastating decline. The Moai, therefore, stand as a dual legacy, a blueprint for profound cultural achievement and a stark ecological warning. What can these silent giants teach us about balancing spiritual and communal ambition with environmental sustainability? Their story is a powerful lesson in how a society's greatest strengths can, if pushed too far, become its greatest vulnerability. This cautionary tale of resource management finds a haunting parallel in the fate of a magnificent city built not on stone but on water. The silent stone faces of Easter Island represent one extreme of a civilization's relationship with its environment. Far across the Pacific, another society wove its identity into the very flow of water, creating a blueprint of staggering complexity. The temples of Angkor rise from the Cambodian jungle like stone mountains, but their true foundation was liquid. The Khmer Empire's visionaries were hydrological geniuses who transformed a seasonal landscape into a permanent engine of power. Their masterpiece was not just Angkor Wat, but the vast, invisible network of canals and reservoirs that fed it. This hydraulic metropolis was a carefully orchestrated system designed to conquer the region's brutal cycle of monsoon floods and parching drought. At its heart were the barrays, immense man-made reservoirs that acted as giant batteries for the empire. The West Barray, for instance, is a staggering 5 miles long and 1.5 miles wide, an artificial lake so perfectly engineered that it still holds water today. Canals channeled monsoon rains into these reservoirs, storing enough to irrigate thousands of acres of rice paddies throughout the dry season. This engineering marvel allowed the Khmer to achieve something almost magical: multiple rice harvests each year. This agricultural surplus supported a population of perhaps 1 million people, fueling the labor force that built the iconic temples. The system was a profound fusion of spiritual belief and political control. The king was not just a ruler, he was the divine master of the waters, a living god who guaranteed the fertility of the land. The temples themselves were integrated into this grand design. Angkor Wat is surrounded by a massive moat that was not merely decorative. It helped stabilize the temple's foundation against the waterlogged soil and acted as part of the larger hydraulic system. The entire city was a symbolic model of the Hindu cosmos, with the Temple Mountains representing the home of the gods and the encircling waters representing the cosmic ocean. The full scale of this achievement was only recently understood. Archaeologists using LiDAR technology, which uses lasers to map the ground beneath dense forest canopy, have revealed a sprawling urban landscape that was previously invisible. The scans show a grid of canals, roads, and household ponds extending far beyond the main temple complexes, proving Angkor was one of the most extensive pre-industrial cities on Earth. How did a civilization so deeply intertwined with its environment eventually falter? Some evidence suggests that centuries of maintaining this complex system, combined with periods of intense monsoon and drought, may have overwhelmed the hydraulic network, leading to siltation and ecological strain. The vision of the Khmer engineers forces us to ask whether the greatest blueprints are those that work in harmony with nature, rather than seeking to dominate it. Their celestial alignment of temples and mastery of terrestrial water finds a direct parallel in a civilization that turned its gaze entirely to the heavens, mapping the stars with a precision that would not be rivaled for over 1,000 years. High above the jungle canopy, the Maya saw a cosmos alive with meaning. a celestial blueprint written in the movement of stars and planets. Their cities were not simply built on the land. They were carefully mapped onto the heavens, with priest astronomers acting as the visionary architects of this divine order. These individuals possessed a profound understanding of the sky, and they translated that knowledge into stone, creating a physical world that mirrored the cosmic one. At the Pyramid of El Castillo in Chichen Itza, this vision becomes a breathtaking spectacle during the spring and autumn equinoxes. As the sun sets on these 2 days, the play of light and shadow against the stepped corners of the pyramid creates the illusion of a giant serpent slithering down the northern staircase. This was no accident. It was a meticulously calculated event, a fusion of astronomy, architecture, and mythology designed to bring the feathered serpent god Kukulkan to life before the eyes of the people. This celestial alignment extended far beyond a single pyramid. Entire cities were oriented to key astronomical events. Temples and observatories, like the Caracol at Chichen Itza, were precisely positioned to track the path of Venus, a planet the Maya associated with war and divine authority. The layout of causeways and major buildings often corresponded with the rising and setting of the sun at solstices or the zenith passage, when the sun is directly overhead. This was not just urban planning, it was a form of sacred geography. The world of the Maya was a living, three-dimensional calendar, where the rhythm of the cosmos dictated the rhythm of life, from the timing of royal coronations to the cycles of planting and harvest. To manage this complex system, the Maya developed incredibly accurate calendars and recorded their observations in screenfold books made of bark paper, known as codices. These codices were the practical blueprints for their society, containing detailed astronomical tables, ritual guides, and prophecies that cemented the king's role as the essential intermediary between the human and divine realms. For a long time, the Maya visionaries remained anonymous, their identities locked within a writing system we could not fully read. But the decipherment of Maya glyphs has dramatically changed that. We now know the names of specific kings who commissioned these great projects, rulers like Kayinish Janob Pakal of Palenque, whose elaborate tomb reveals his personal journey to the afterlife. We can identify master architects and sculptors who signed their work, individuals like the man named Moai, who carved the magnificent panels at Piedras Negras. These were not mythical figures, but real people with names and titles, the brilliant minds who translated a cosmic vision into a tangible stone and mortar reality. Their entire civilization was built on the premise that the earthly and celestial realms were one, and that by building in harmony with the stars, they could maintain the balance of the universe. This profound connection to the ephemeral patterns of the sky makes the tangible, earth-bound mystery of another great civilization, one that left behind a blueprint of immense but silent stones, all the more compelling. For centuries, the Amazon was seen as a vast, untouched wilderness, a place where only small, nomadic tribes could survive. That story is now collapsing. The dense green canopy has been hiding a secret on the forest floor, a sprawling blueprint of geometric earthworks that rewrites everything we thought we knew. Modern LiDAR technology, which uses lasers to see through the vegetation, along with the unfortunate spread of deforestation, has revealed a stunning network of squares, circles, and lines etched into the earth. These are not natural formations. They are the work of unknown pre-Columbian visionaries who engineered their environment on a staggering scale. The sheer number of these structures suggests a much more populous and complex society than ever imagined, one that actively shaped the jungle into a managed landscape. What was the purpose of this vast terrestrial design? Some of the enclosures, with their deep ditches and tall banks, appear to be defensive fortifications, protecting communities in a world we now know was far from empty. Others, with their precise geometric shapes and alignments, strongly suggest they were ceremonial centers, places of ritual and social gathering that anchored the community to the land. The most profound theory, however, is that this entire system represents a blueprint for sophisticated land management. These societies were not just living in the Amazon, they were cultivating it, transforming it into a productive, human-made environment. The evidence for this lies in the soil itself, a mysterious, incredibly fertile earth known as terra preta, or anthropogenic dark earth. This is not ordinary jungle soil. It is a rich, black earth created intentionally by humans, a mix of charcoal, pottery shards, compost, and manure. The visionaries of the Amazon discovered how to supercharge their environment, creating this nutrient-dense soil to support agriculture on a scale large enough to feed substantial, settled populations. They were not passive inhabitants of a pristine forest, they were active, brilliant terraformers. This discovery forces a profound and urgent question. Does this newly uncovered blueprint require us to completely rewrite the history of the Amazon and its peoples? The answer seems to be a resounding yes. The jungle was not a barrier to civilization. It was the foundation for a unique and flourishing way of life, a testament to human ingenuity in creating a sustainable blueprint for existence. The hidden cities of the Amazon, with their geometric designs and enriched earth, challenge our deepest assumptions about wilderness and inspire us to look for other lost urban plans hidden in plain sight. Perched on a knife-edge ridge in the Andean clouds, Machu Picchu feels less like a ruin and more like a living part of the mountain itself. This was the vision of the Incan Emperor Pachacuti and his master architects, who transformed this impossible location into a royal estate and spiritual sanctuary. Their blueprint was a profound declaration that humanity could build without conquering, that a city could be a seamless extension of the sacred landscape. Every element of its design speaks to a deep, reverential dialogue with the natural world. The entire mountainside is sculpted into hundreds of agricultural terraces, which did more than just grow food. These stone-faced shelves prevented erosion, channeled rainwater, and created microclimates for different crops, turning a steep slope into a self-sustaining garden. The stonework itself is an engineering marvel. Instead of fighting the frequent earthquakes of the region, the Incan masons designed for them. They cut granite blocks with such precision that they fit together without mortar, allowing the walls to dance and settle during tremors before locking perfectly back into place. This was architecture that moved with the earth, not against it, but the true genius of the blueprint was its spiritual alignment. The Incas saw the surrounding peaks as Apu's powerful mountain spirits, and they oriented their most important structures to honor them. The Temple of the Sun is perfectly positioned so that the sun's rays during the June solstice shine through a specific window to illuminate a ceremonial stone within. In the main plaza, the Room of the Three Windows frames a breathtaking view of the sacred Apus, physically connecting the interior space to the eternal mountains. At the highest point of the city sits the Intihuatana stone, an intricately carved granite pillar whose name means the hitching post of the sun. This was no simple sundial. It was a sophisticated astronomical instrument and a powerful spiritual anchor, believed to hold the sun in its place at the turning points of the year. Some researchers propose that the entire layout of Machu Picchu is a terrestrial map of celestial patterns, perhaps mirroring the constellation of the Southern Cross, thereby grounding the cosmos onto the mountain ridge. To walk through this city is to understand a worldview where the land was alive, a divine partner in creation. The Incan visionaries did not simply build on the land, they built with it, weaving a blueprint of stone and spirit that challenges our modern separation of civilization and nature. This profound harmony stands in stark contrast to the vision of a culture that forged its empire not through alignment with the land, but through the relentless engine of war. A fortress of sheer ambition rises from the plains of Sri Lanka, a colossal rock column defying the sky. This is Sigiriya, the Lion Rock, the brainchild of a king named Kassyapa, a monarch whose life was defined by both brilliant vision and profound paranoia. His blueprint was a declaration of power and fear, a palace in the sky designed to be both an impenetrable fortress and a court of legendary beauty. After seizing the throne through a controversial act, Kassyapa sought a capital that was not just defensible, but utterly unconquerable, a symbol of his authority that would awe his subjects and deter his enemies. He chose a 200-meter-high monolith of granite and transformed its summit into his royal residence, a feat that seems to border on the impossible. The defensive genius of his plan is immediately apparent. The entire complex is surrounded by wide moats, creating a watery barrier that isolates the rock. The ascent to the top is a controlled gauntlet, a single, narrow pathway that forces any potential attacker into a vulnerable, single-file climb, completely exposed to defenders above. But Kassyapa's vision was not solely one of war. His blueprint seamlessly wove together martial strength with sublime artistry. At the base of the rock, he laid out elaborate water gardens with interlocking pools and fountains powered by gravity and pressure, a serene and sophisticated landscape that contrasted with the stark fortress above. Further up, along a sheltered face of the cliff, he commissioned artists to paint breathtaking frescoes of celestial maidens, their vibrant colors still echoing after 15 centuries. A mirror wall was constructed alongside the main pathway, polished so perfectly that the king could see his reflection as he walked, a literal and metaphorical affirmation of his power. Perhaps the most astonishing engineering feat was the sophisticated hydraulic system that supplied fresh water to the very summit. A complex network of cisterns was carved directly into the rock itself, capturing and storing monsoon rain, while a series of pumps and conduits, some believe powered by a system of windlasses, lifted water from the gardens below to service the palace baths and pools high above. This was a city in the sky, a self-sufficient citadel where defense and luxury were two sides of the same coin. Yet, this magnificent blueprint was tragically short-lived. Kassyapa's fortress capital lasted only a brief period, perhaps 18 years, before his downfall. After his death, the site was abandoned as a royal palace, its purpose fulfilled and then forgotten. In a poignant twist, Sigiriya was later reclaimed by Buddhist monks, transforming from a seat of temporal power and fear into a serene monastery, a place of quiet contemplation for centuries. How could a design born from such personal turmoil and insecurity create something of such enduring and transcendent beauty? The Lion Rock stands as a powerful lesson in human duality, a reminder that our greatest drives for security and for splendor are often intertwined, capable of leaving behind legacies that far outlive the fears that first conceived them. This pursuit of an ideal city, carved from both rock and ambition, finds a parallel in a legendary metropolis celebrated not for its walls but for its wisdom. While kings built fortresses of stone, another dynasty pursued a different kind of empire, one made of parchment and ideas. In the bustling port city of Alexandria, the Ptolemaic rulers of Egypt conceived a blueprint of staggering intellectual ambition, the Great Library. This was not a building in the traditional sense, but a vision for a universal archive, an attempt to gather the entire sum of human knowledge under one roof. Guided by scholars like Demetrius of Phalerum, this institution was designed to be the brain of the world, a center where every book, every scroll, every idea from every known civilization could be collected, catalogued, and studied. The scale of this endeavor was unprecedented, The Ptolemies were relentless in their acquisition. They decreed that every ship docking in Alexandria's harbor be searched for scrolls. Any found were confiscated, copied by the library's scribes, and then the copies were returned to the owners while the originals were kept for the library's collection. This aggressive policy was supplemented by a massive, state-funded translation project, most famously the translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek, a work known as the Septuagint. The goal was to create a single, unified repository of global thought, a blueprint for understanding the entire cosmos. Within its halls, legendary thinkers pushed the boundaries of knowledge. The geographer and mathematician Eratosthenes not only calculated the Earth's circumference with remarkable accuracy, but he also created one of the first maps of the entire known world, incorporating accounts from travelers and conquerors. The engineer Ctesibius experimented with pneumatics and built intricate water clocks. Aristarchus of Samos proposed a heliocentric model of the solar system, a theory that would be forgotten for over 1,000 years. The library itself was part of a larger complex called the Mauseon, a temple to the muses where scholars lived, dined, and debated, supported by royal patronage to dedicate their lives entirely to research. The tragic irony is that the very comprehensiveness of this blueprint made its loss so catastrophic. The library did not fall in a single, fiery cataclysm, but suffered a slow death by 1,000 cuts. There was likely a major fire during Julius Caesar's civil war in 48 BCE, but the institution struggled on for centuries. Its final decline was a gradual process of neglect, budget cuts, and religious and political purges, as different regimes saw its vast collection of pagan knowledge as a threat. The complete destruction was not an event, but a slow fading, a dispersal of its scrolls to other centers or simply into dust. The loss of this universal archive is one of history's great intellectual tragedies. How many plays by the great Greek dramatists, how many volumes of ancient history, how many scientific treatises on medicine and astronomy simply vanished forever? What did the loss of this blueprint for knowledge cost humanity in terms of progress, in art, in science, in philosophy? It stands as a permanent warning about the fragility of our collective memory. And it forces us to ask, in our own digital age, are we building a new universal library with the internet? Or are we creating a system just as vulnerable, where vast stores of information can be lost to technological obsolescence or deliberate erasure with the click of a button? The sea was the lifeblood of Carthage, and its visionaries engineered a harbor so cunning it became the very heart of their empire. While other powers built ports, the Carthaginians constructed a dual blueprint, a masterpiece of military deception and commercial might. Two immense artificial basins were carved from the coastline, one rectangular for trade and a secret, circular one for war. The commercial harbor buzzed with the wealth of the Mediterranean, its waters crowded with merchant ships unloading spices, textiles, and precious metals. But the true genius lay next door, hidden behind a high wall. The military harbor was a perfectly circular fortress of water, its entrance cleverly concealed from open view. A single, narrow channel connected it to the commercial basin, a bottleneck that could be sealed instantly with a massive iron chain to trap any enemy vessel daring enough to breach the outer defenses. Within this inner sanctum, the Carthaginian navy rested in absolute secrecy. Along the circular shore stood hundreds of covered ship sheds, each designed to shelter 2 warships. These dry docks kept the vessels safe from rot and prying eyes, ready to be launched at a moment's notice. At the center of the circular harbor rose an artificial island, crowned with a tall command tower. From this vantage point, the harbor admiral could observe every ship and issue orders across the water, a complete and self-contained system for naval dominance. The entire complex was a machine for projecting power, allowing Carthage to control sea lanes without revealing the full strength or readiness of its fleet. The Roman historian Appian, describing the city's final days, recorded the shock Roman soldiers felt upon seeing this hidden naval city, a testament to the Punic engineering they had never fully understood. This single, brilliant infrastructure project was the foundation upon which Carthaginian wealth and influence were built. Its centralized trade protected its most vital military asset and allowed for rapid, coordinated deployment of forces across the Mediterranean. How could a society's entire power structure hinge on the layout of its docks? In the case of Carthage, the harbor was not just a place for ships. It was a physical manifestation of their strategic genius, a blueprint that fused commerce and combat into an unstoppable force. The meticulous order of this maritime empire, however, finds a startling contrast in the sprawling, decentralized power of a civilization that wove its influence not through a single port, but through a network of trade routes spanning continents. Across the rolling landscapes of eastern North America, another kind of blueprint emerged, one written not in stone but in soil. For over 5,000 years, a succession of cultures known as the Mound Builders transformed the earth itself into a sacred canvas. The Adena, the Hopewell, and later the Mississippians were the visionaries behind this monumental work, their societies led by powerful religious and political figures who directed the labor of thousands. Their blueprints took astonishing forms, from vast geometric enclosures to colossal pyramids of packed earth, and even effigy mounds shaped into sinuous serpents and soaring birds that can only be comprehended from the air. These were not random piles of dirt. They were carefully engineered structures that formed the heart of ceremonial complexes, physical anchors for a society's spiritual life and cosmic understanding. At the center of this world stood Cahokia, a city that rivaled any in Europe at its peak around the year 1050. Its focal point was Monk's Mound, a colossal, tiered platform rising 100 feet high, the largest pre-Columbian earthwork in the Americas. The summit supported a massive building, likely the residence of a paramount chief, a person who literally and figuratively looked down upon a city of thousands, a bustling metropolis of thatched roof houses, plazas, and smaller mounds. The entire urban layout was a deliberate blueprint for social hierarchy, with elite residences on the mounds and commoners in the surrounding areas, a clear physical manifestation of power and status. These earthworks also functioned as sophisticated astronomical observatories. At Cahokia, a circle of tall wooden posts, now called woodhenge, acted as a solar calendar, marking the equinoxes and solstices to guide the agricultural and ritual cycles of the community. Further east, in what is now Ohio, the Great Serpent Mound winds its way for over a quarter mile, an effigy of a snake seemingly swallowing a giant egg. Its coils are aligned with the summer solstice sunset, suggesting a deep connection to celestial events and perhaps myths of creation or the cycles of life and death. The mounds served multiple, overlapping purposes. They were platforms for the elite, stages for public rituals, and tombs for the honored dead, filled with precious goods from a trade network that spanned the continent. Then, around the 14th century, this flourishing civilization went into a profound decline. Cahokia was largely abandoned, and the great mound building tradition faded. The reasons are still debated. A combination of climate change, resource depletion, and social upheaval likely strained the society beyond its limits. What remains is the sheer scale of the communal effort. To build Monk's Mound alone, workers moved over 55 million cubic feet of earth in baskets, load by load, generation after generation. What powerful belief system could compel such a sustained, unified effort? It was a worldview that saw the Earth as a living partner, a place where humanity could collaborate with the spiritual realm by reshaping the very ground beneath their feet. The silent, grassy mounds that dot the American heartland are a testament to a lost vision of cosmic order, a blueprint for a society that sought to build its heaven here on Earth. The legacy of these earthwork architects, a civilization that moved mountains of soil, guides us toward another legendary blueprint, one not of earth but of shimmering, elusive gold. Gold has a way of rewriting reality in the minds of those who crave it. Far from the earthworks of North America, in the highlands of what is now Colombia, a single, shimmering ritual gave birth to one of history's most potent and destructive legends. The original El Dorado was not a city but a man. For the Muisca people, the ceremony of the Gilded One was a profound spiritual and political blueprint. A new chief, to legitimize his rule, would travel to the sacred lake Guatavita. His body was coated in adhesive resin and then completely covered in fine gold dust, transforming him into a living, breathing sun god. He would then step onto a raft laden with gold and emeralds, and as he was paddled to the center of the lake, his attendants would cast these magnificent offerings into the dark waters as a sacrifice to the deities below. This was a blueprint for sacred kingship, a public demonstration of the chief's connection to the divine and his commitment to the prosperity of his people through a literal investment of their greatest wealth into the earth itself. When fragments of this story reached Spanish conquistadors, however, the blueprint was catastrophically misread. They heard tales of a man covered in gold and saw only the metal, not the meaning. The ritual was stripped of its spiritual context and inflated in the European imagination into a fantastical city, a place where gold was so common it paved the streets and adorned every building. This distorted vision became a self-perpetuating myth, a phantom blueprint that drove centuries of desperate, brutal exploration. Expeditions hacked their way through jungles and scaled impossible mountains, fueled by the promise of a metropolis of pure wealth. Men like Gonzalo Pizarro and Sir Walter Raleigh were consumed by this dream, leading hundreds to their deaths in search of a phantom. The psychological power of this gilded dream cannot be overstated. It overrode reason, justified immense suffering, and created a feedback loop of exaggeration, where every new rumor was seized upon as confirmation of the ultimate prize just over the next ridge. The profound irony is that a very real and sophisticated cultural blueprint was being ignored in the frantic search for a fictional one. The Muisca and their neighbors, like the Quimbaya and Tarona, were master goldsmiths whose societal structure was a complex tapestry of trade, agriculture, and ritual. Their goldworking was not about hoarding wealth, but about capturing spiritual essence. They developed the lost wax casting technique to a stunning degree, creating intricate paporos, lime containers used in coca rituals, and magnificent tunjos, small votive figures offered to the gods. Their gold was a sacred material, a way to make the intangible tangible. The conquistadors, however, saw only loot. They melted down countless irreplaceable works of art into bland gold ingots, obliterating a vast cultural heritage in their quest for a myth they themselves had created. The consequences were devastating, leading to the enslavement, displacement, and death of countless indigenous people across an entire continent. How does the blueprint of a dream, however distorted, shape real-world actions and history? The legend of El Dorado stands as a permanent testament to the power of a story to rewrite maps and destroy civilizations, all for a vision of a treasure that was never there. This desperate, centuries-long hunt for a gilded city reveals a deeper, more primal human yearning, one that shifts from the pursuit of worldly wealth to the ultimate treasure, the secret of life without end. A king once scoured the world for a plant that could restore his youth, a quest recorded on ancient clay tablets over 4,000 years ago. The Epic of Gilgamesh presents one of our oldest blueprints for immortality, a story of a powerful ruler who, confronted by the death of his friend, journeys to the ends of the earth in a desperate search for eternal life. This fundamental human yearning, the desire to conquer death itself, has been mapped onto the landscape of our collective imagination for millennia. It is a blueprint found in countless cultures, but perhaps its most famous cartographer was a Spanish explorer named Juan Ponce de Leon. History remembers him sailing to Florida in the early 1500s, driven by tales of a miraculous spring whose waters could reverse the flow of time. While the historical accuracy of his specific mission is debated, his story perfectly encapsulates the era's fusion of exploration and legend. He was not merely searching for new land, he was chasing a mythical design for eternal youth, a promise that lured Europeans across an ocean. This blueprint was not confined to the swamps of Florida. In ancient China, Taoist alchemists operated from a different but parallel design. They sought to concoct an elixir of immortality, experimenting with complex mineral compounds and cinnabar in elaborate laboratories, believing they could refine the human body into an eternal spiritual form. Theirs was a chemical and spiritual blueprint for transcendence. Meanwhile, in the Middle Ages, European alchemists pursued the philosopher's stone, a substance believed to not only turn base metals into gold, but also to produce the elixir of life, granting longevity and healing. These traditions, from the Middle East to the Americas, all shared a common thread: the conviction that the natural world held a secret key, a pre-existing design that, if discovered, could unlock the door to an endless life. Why is this concept so relentlessly persistent across centuries and civilizations? It speaks to our deepest fears and our highest aspirations. The blueprint for immortality is ultimately a response to our awareness of mortality, a defiant attempt to impose order and permanence on the chaotic reality of decay and death. It has driven more than just exploration. It has fueled scientific inquiry into fields like medicine and genetics, where the goal of extending life and combating disease continues this ancient quest in a modern laboratory. It has inspired countless works of art, from paintings and operas to films, each one reinterpreting the old blueprint for a new age. What does this endless search truly reveal about us? It is not merely a fear of death, but a profound love for the beauty of existence, a desire to see, to learn, and to experience more than a single lifetime could ever allow. This universal drive to transcend our physical limits, to build a legacy that defies time, finds its ultimate expression in the ambition of a single civilization that sought to construct a ladder to the gods themselves. Towering above the flat, sun-baked plains of Mesopotamia, ziggurats rose like man-made mountains against the horizon. These were not tombs for the dead, but living bridges to the heavens, the ultimate blueprint for connecting the human world with the divine. In cities like Ur and Babylon, Sumerian and Babylonian priest-kings and master architects conceived these colossal stepped pyramids as literal stairways. Their design was a profound statement of belief, a structure where the gods could descend to earth and the high priests could ascend, through ritual, closer to the celestial realm. The very form of the ziggurat was a symbolic recreation of the mountain, which ancient peoples saw as the natural home of the gods. Each level, painted a different color and accessed by steep, central staircases, represented a step closer to that sacred space. The blueprint itself was an engineering marvel for its time. At its core was a massive, solid structure of sun-dried mud brick, a material readily available from the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This core was then encased in a protective skin of kiln-fired bricks, glazed in brilliant colors to withstand the elements and gleam under the Mesopotamian sun. At the very summit sat a small, exquisite temple, the dwelling place of the city's patron deity. This was the focal point of the entire complex, a room where only the most elite priests could enter to serve the god and interpret their will for the people below. Perhaps the most famous of all these structures was the Etemenanke in Babylon, the ziggurat dedicated to the god Marduk. Its name translates to the foundation of heaven and earth, and its immense, terraced form, reaching for the sky, is widely believed to have inspired the biblical story of the Tower of Babel. That tale of human hubris and divine confusion captures the sheer scale of the ambition behind these structures, but the ziggurat's role extended far beyond the spiritual. It was the absolute center of the city-state, a blueprint for an entire society. The complex at its base was a bustling hub of administration, where scribes recorded taxes and distributed rations. It was an economic engine, with storerooms holding the city's surplus grain and workshops producing goods under its patronage. The entire system was a self-perpetuating cycle, where the authority of the god, mediated by the king and priests from the ziggurat, organized every aspect of daily life from farming to law. This drive to build a stairway to heaven, to physically reach for the gods, was one of humanity's most audacious architectural dreams. Yet that same impulse to map the divine would soon be turned, with equal ambition, toward mapping the entire known world. From the depths of the Aegean Sea, a corroded lump of bronze and wood would utterly transform our understanding of ancient genius. Recovered from a Roman shipwreck near the island of Antikythera around the turn of the 20th century, this unassuming object sat in a museum for decades before anyone grasped its significance. It was the Antikythera Mechanism, a complex clockwork device dating back to the 2nd century before the Common Era, and it was a technological blueprint of staggering sophistication. The unknown Greek visionaries who designed it, possibly from the school of the legendary Archimedes in Syracuse, had created nothing less than an analog computer. This was not a simple calendar. It was a precise mechanical model of the cosmos, operated by a hand crank that turned an intricate assembly of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears. These gears moved a series of dials and pointers on the front and back of the device, predicting the positions of the sun and moon, the phases of the lunar cycle, and the movements of planets known to the ancients. It could forecast eclipses and even track the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games. To achieve this, the creators engineered gear trains with teeth cut with such precision that they accounted for subtle astronomical irregularities, like the moon's varying speed in its orbit. The device was a compact universe of knowledge, a handheld planetarium that brought the clockwork of the heavens down to human scale. For centuries, we believed such complex geared technology did not appear until the cathedral clocks of medieval Europe over 1,000 years later. The existence of the Antikythera mechanism shatters that timeline. Modern researchers, using advanced 3-dimensional X-ray and CT scanning technology, have been able to peer inside the corroded fragments and read the faint, inscribed user manual etched into its surfaces. These inscriptions reveal a device that was both a scientific instrument and a philosophical statement, a physical manifestation of the Greek understanding of a predictable, orderly cosmos. It forces a haunting question upon us. If this one blueprint survived by pure chance at the bottom of the sea, how many other advanced technological designs from the ancient world have been lost forever to the corrosion of time? This single glimpse of ancient high-tech compels us to reconsider the silent gaps in our history, to wonder what other marvels were conceived in the minds of visionaries whose names we will never know. Beneath the calm surface of the Mediterranean Sea, entire city streets lie still and silent. the bustling ports of Thonis Heracleion and Canopus off the coast of Egypt, and the Bronze Age town of Pavloptri in Greece did not vanish through war or conquest. They were swallowed by the sea itself, their urban blueprints preserved in a deep, protective blanket of silt and sand. Natural disasters, massive earthquakes that caused the land to suddenly sink, and the slow, relentless creep of rising sea levels gradually submerged these centers of human activity, locking their secrets away for over 1,000 years. The visionaries who planned these cities, the engineers who laid out their harbors, and the priests who sited their temples, designed for a world that was literally disappearing beneath their feet. Today, marine archaeologists are the new explorers of these drowned worlds. They do not dig in sand, they fan away sediment to reveal a frozen moment. In the Bay of Aboukir, the lost city of Thonis Heracleion has yielded colossal statues of its pharaohs, the ruins of a grand temple to the god Ammon, and the haunting remains of 64 ships resting in the harbor mud, their cargoes still aboard. At Pavloptri, the oldest known submerged city, the complete town plan is visible on the seafloor, with streets, buildings, courtyards, and tombs laid out just as they were when people walked there 3,000 years ago. These underwater blueprints offer a direct line into the past. The artifacts are not just treasure, they are data. A set of weights and measures from a Thonis Heracleion customs house reveals the city's role as a critical tax collection point for all trade entering Egypt from the Greek world. Gold coins and delicate jewelry speak of immense wealth, while simple toys and kitchen pottery whisper of the daily lives of ordinary citizens. The presence of temples to both Egyptian and Greek gods in these sunken ports shows a world of cultural exchange and religious fusion long before globalization. These cities stand as stark monuments to a truth we are only now fully confronting. Climate change and geological instability have always been powerful architects of human destiny. Their submerged foundations force us to look at our own world. What will future archaeologists exploring our flooded coastal metropolises centuries from now deduce about our society from the steel skeletons of our skyscrapers and the concrete veins of our submerged highways? The silent, watery ruins are a profound reminder that the line between a thriving civilization and a forgotten blueprint is often drawn not by invaders, but by the changing face of the planet itself. The shifting sands of the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter of Arabia, guard the memory of a city built on perfume. Yuba, celebrated in the Quran and in Bedouin legend as Iram of the Pillars, was the vision of the ancient Ad people, master traders who carved a civilization from the harshest of environments. Their blueprint was one of pure economic genius, a fortress city rising at the nexus of invisible desert tracts, a place where camel caravans laden with priceless frankincense could find water, safety, and commerce. Frankincense, the aromatic resin wept by trees in distant Dhofar, was more valuable than gold in the ancient world, essential for religious rituals, medicines, and embalming from Rome to Babylon. Yuba's architects built their wealth directly upon this fragrant trade, creating a hub that controlled the flow of incense across the desert. Yet the legends speak not only of their wealth, but of their downfall, a punishment for their arrogance and corruption. The ground, it is said, opened up and swallowed the entire city in a single cataclysmic event, leaving nothing but a desert void and a powerful moral fable, an Atlantis of the sands. For centuries, Yuba was considered pure myth, a story told to warn against hubris. Then, in the 1990s, a team led by explorer Nicholas Clapp and archaeologist Juris Zarins did the impossible. They found it. Their blueprint for discovery was as modern as the city they sought was ancient. Using satellite imagery from NASA and the space shuttle, they identified ancient camel tracks, invisible from the ground, that converged like ghostly highways on a single point in modern-day Oman. Following this celestial map, ground surveys confirmed the location, a place called Shisar. There, they unearthed the remains of a massive octagonal fortress and a caravanserai, its walls collapsed into a giant sinkhole. The legend of a city swallowed by the earth was not just a metaphor, it was a geological reality. The city's brilliant blueprint was also its fatal flaw. Its foundations were built over a vast limestone cavern, a natural reservoir that provided its precious water. For generations, this was the source of Yuba's life, but the constant drawing of water and the heavy traffic of caravans likely weakened the cavern roof until it could no longer hold, catastrophically collapsing and dragging the city of sin, as the stories labeled it, into the abyss. The story of Yuba is where legend and archaeology become inseparable. The city's physical demise serves as a stark environmental blueprint, a lesson in the unsustainable use of a critical resource. Its people, the Ad, mastered the desert trade but failed to heed the fragility of the very ground beneath their feet. Their fate forces a haunting question upon us. What does it truly mean for a civilization to be lost? Is it simply the physical disappearance of its cities, or is it the forgetting of the hard-won lessons its people learned, often at a terrible cost? The cautionary tale of Yuba, a city that traded in the scent of the gods only to be reclaimed by the earth, prepares us to look deeper into the very idea of disappearance, to question whether a civilization is ever truly gone if its story and its warning continues to echo across the centuries. So much can vanish in the silence that follows a civilization's final breath. To call a people lost is to acknowledge a profound rupture in memory, a point where their story stops being told in their own voice and becomes a puzzle for others to solve. These blueprints disappear for a multitude of reasons, a cascade of failures that often intertwine. Environmental collapse, like the deforestation of Easter Island or the silted canals of Ankara, can strip away the very foundation of a society. Conquest and war scatter populations and erase cultural identity, while pandemics can decimate a people so swiftly that their knowledge dies with them. Sometimes a civilization does not so much vanish as it is absorbed, its blueprints repurposed and its name forgotten by the dominant culture that followed. The Minoans of Crete were such a people, their grand palaces and intricate art eventually overshadowed by the Mycenaean Greeks who came after. The work of piecing these fragments back together falls to a unique kind of detective, the historian and the archaeologist. They are the translators of silence, reading the stories told by a post hole in the soil, the wear patterns on a stone tool, or the chemical signature in a piece of pottery. They sift through half-understood texts and listen to the echoes in oral traditions, searching for the common thread that leads back to the original design. Today, their toolkit is more powerful than ever. LiDAR lasers strip away the jungle canopy to reveal the ghostly grids of Amazonian cities. Satellite imagery traces ancient camel tracks across empty deserts, pointing the way to legendary trade hubs. DNA analysis of skeletal remains can trace migrations and familial relationships, revealing the human networks that held these societies together. These technologies are allowing us to read the Earth itself as a historical document, one that has been waiting centuries for us to learn its language. This entire journey through forgotten blueprints forces a deeply philosophical question upon us. Are we witnessing a fundamental cycle of human history where civilizations rise on grand visions, reach a peak of expression, and then inevitably recede, leaving only their most durable ideas behind? And if that is our fate, what will future explorers, perhaps thousands of years from now, make of the world we have built? Will they sift through the concrete and steel of our cities and understand our own blueprint, our values, our fears, and our dreams? Or will we, too, become another enigmatic entry in the long catalogue of the lost, our greatest achievements waiting silently for a future generation to rediscover their meaning? The silent stones and sunken cities of the past are not just relics, they are active blueprints, their principles echoing through our modern world in ways we are only beginning to fully appreciate. The genius of ancient visionaries lives on, directly inspiring the architects and urban planners of today who face similar challenges of sustainability and community. Consider the life-giving hydraulic systems of Petra and Anchor. Modern sustainable design now embraces this ancient wisdom, using gravity-fed water channels, constructed wetlands for natural filtration, and massive cisterns to harvest rainwater, all principles that the Nabateans and Khmer engineers mastered centuries ago. The passive cooling found in deep window wells and the strategic orientation of buildings to maximize shade are lessons relearned from cultures that built for their climate without relying on fragile energy grids. The orderly grid of Mohenjo-Daro, with its focus on public health and efficient circulation, is a direct ancestor of modern urban planning, emphasizing walkable neighborhoods and logical infrastructure. Meanwhile, the seamless integration of Machu Picchu with its mountain environment inspires a philosophy known as biomimicry, where architects design structures that work with the land, not against it, using terraces to prevent erosion and materials that blend with the natural palette. Contemporary visionaries openly acknowledge this debt. The renowned architect Frank Lloyd Wright spoke of organic architecture, buildings that grew from the site, a principle any Incan master builder would have understood. The visionary Buckminster Fuller looked to the geometric efficiencies of nature and ancient structures for his geodesic domes. Even our renewed fascination with astronomical alignment finds modern expression. The Greenwich Millennium Dome in London and numerous contemporary buildings are deliberately oriented to solstice sunrises or celestial events, creating a connection to the cosmos that would have felt deeply familiar to the Maya astronomers of Chichen Itza. The very concept of communal effort, so vital to raising the Moai or building the mounds of Cahokia, is being reborn in our digital age through crowd-sourced initiatives and open-source design, where thousands collaborate online to solve complex problems. These are not mere coincidences, they are the legacy of forgotten genius, a testament to the timelessness of good design. Look at the city around you. The park that manages stormwater with gentle slopes and native plants, the new building angled to capture the winter sun, the public square designed for community gathering. In all of these, you can find the faint but unmistakable fingerprints of those early visionaries. Their blueprints were never truly lost. They were simply waiting for us to rediscover the profound truths they held, reminding us that the greatest human designs are those that honor both the earth and the spirit of community. Our journey across continents and millennia brings us full circle, from the deserts of Peru to the jungles of Cambodia. We have walked in the footsteps of Imhotep and the Nazca line makers, of the Maya astronomers and the Khmer water engineers. Their forgotten blueprints were never just plans for buildings or cities. They were profound expressions of belief, raw assertions of power, and breathtaking leaps of innovation. They represent the human spirit's relentless drive to impose order on chaos and to find meaning in the cosmos. These stories of lost genius remind us that greatness is profoundly fragile, and that even the most magnificent legacies can be erased by the slow march of time or a single, sudden cataclysm. Yet, because of the relentless curiosity of explorers and the patient work of scholars, we can still recover fragments of their vision. We can still hear the echoes of their ambition. Let this exploration be a call to appreciate the hidden histories that lie just beneath our feet, and to consider with care the blueprints we are now creating for the generations that will follow us. What will our own legacy whisper to the future? Thank you for joining this quest into the mysteries of our past. If these stories of vision and resilience resonated with you, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments.